All right, good afternoon. Thank you for joining at 4 o'clock on a Thursday. I'm glad to see so many people joining. I'm sure there will be a few more coming in as we get started. A few things as we begin. If you could please use the chat for needs or questions, and then any questions about the decisions, if you could put those in the Q&A. That way, if I'm unable to answer something, I have those recorded and will be posting to our TCLAS page on the TEA website. I am recording this session so that we can post that. I think I'm recording the session, I believe so. Recording the session so that, had to check that, recording the session so that I can post it, we can post it to our TCLAS page on our website, along with slides later on in case you need those to refer back to, or for anyone who is unable to attend. So this session is the kickoff for decisions 2A and 2C, which is about high quality instructional materials, core approved products, supports through the state approved vendor list, as well as our instructional coaches. So some of you may be here for both of those decisions or only one. But I'll try to answer as many questions as we go. So again, please use the Q&A for questions and reserve the chat for any immediate needs as we go. So, well, let's get started because I'm sure you have some questions, and it's already 4 o'clock on a Thursday. To begin with, my name is Melissa Lautenschlager. I am the Director of Instructional Materials and Implementation Division at the Texas Education Agency. And part of the work that we do is, of course, supporting districts with the use of those core Tier 1 instructional products, as well as a few other things. So happy to answer some questions as we can go through this today. And I just want to also congratulate you on your award and how exciting it is for the work that you're going to be doing with students and student achievement. I know this is an exciting time to get some additional supports and funding to do and work with some initiatives that you're trying to roll out in your districts. Thank you so much for joining today, and hopefully I can help set you up for the next steps. To begin with, our webinar is going to cover a few pieces. Probably if you've been to a few webinars over the last day or so, you've seen a few of these things, so bear with me. But we want to make sure that we're clear on some next steps for the TCLAS process. And then I'll be spending the majority of the time diving into the decision specific components and next steps, and talking through TCLAS in general and sharing some contact information if you have any follow-up questions. So one, thank you so much for your quick turnaround last week with the award confirmation survey. So you received those awards last week and then had only just a few days to turn those around. Really appreciate the quick attention to that and the ability to let us know what you were looking to accept as that recommitment to the program and assurances. So thank you for taking the time to do that last week. This week and into next week is your opportunity to attend the program onboarding. So attending those kickoff webinars for the specific decision points. We started those webinars earlier this week, and we're continuing into next week for all the decision points to share additional details. The next part of this process will be to complete the eGrants application. And beginning tomorrow morning, we do have an overview webinar session for the eGrants application. And that'll be followed up with some office hours in the following weeks. And you also will have the support for the TCLAS eGrant calculator to be able to support as you go through the application. Just a reminder that application opens in mid-September, so I'm not sure if it's open yet or if it's coming soon. Sorry about that, I'll check. But it does close October 29th. I think it opens by tomorrow so that you can ask in the overview. A quick picture here. If you're in this session, we're going to again talk about decision 2A and 2C, and specifically related to the award of grant funds to contract with a state-approved vendor. Tomorrow there is the eGrants overview, and then you can see next week we do have some additional webinars for various decisions. And then starting next Friday, there will be office hours for you to have your specific questions asked and answered about the eGrants process. So let's dive into why you're here today, which is to learn more about this award and being able to answer some of your questions and understand next steps in this process. I want to begin by talking a little bit about decision 2 and what we'll be covering in today's webinar. So decision 2 had 3 components to it. And today we are specifically talking about part A and C, which A is about the implementation support and or professional learning. And then we'll also talk about the coaching award for 2C. Yesterday, we hosted a webinar on the print materials. And if you missed that webinar, it is going to be posted online if it's not already there, so that you can access the information from that webinar as well, because probably you also requested print materials to support with the rollout of the approved products. As we get into this, I want to jump into this first component of 2A. So 2A was requesting support for the rollout of the high quality instructional materials core products that were approved. There were actually 2 options of funding that could be received. One was to receive access via TEA, so that's through our HQIM component. And just to share, we had a cap on some numbers, and so there are some pieces there. And then some of you specifically requested option 2, which is to access supports directly working with the state approved vendor. And that state approved vendor list is on the website for TCLAS, and I'll put it in the chat in a little bit if you don't already have access to it. I'm going to jump in here to talk about this first component of 2A and a little background about the theory behind it and why these supports are important that I know many of you are operating under. And so if you're here, you've made an important decision that you want to invest time and energy into switching to a different high quality instructional material to better support your students. And so we're operating on this theory of action that it is a combination of adopting the right materials along with learning and effectively using those materials through implementation with fidelity that actually gets us to those student outcomes. So it's this is not all the things that make a school and a district run well, but to support strong instruction in your classrooms and student learning, it's important to have the right high quality instructional materials and know how to effectively use those with students to get to the student achievement. And you know that's why you're here today, to learn more about this piece that's really focused on the implementation with fidelity to support your use. When we think about implementation with fidelity, it requires system-wide supports. And we think about these system-wide supports in two categories and addressing the needs of different roles in different ways. So the first is the implementation support, really being focused, working with the leaders to develop a strong strategic plan and how to take on and effectively roll out the use of the new high quality instructional materials. And then leading up to the opportunity for product specific professional learning. And so within the product specific professional learning, different roles have different understandings and needs of how they understand the different products, and they support the use of ultimately the students, but through teachers effectively using those high quality instructional materials. And so one of the things that we talk about and why product specific professional learning is important is that it really helps to focus teachers and coaches in a very specific way to support students. So being able to take strategies and know how to use them and how they appear within the materials is critically important to success with students. So I just want to call out a few things here that why having product specific professional learning can better support your student achievement goals. One is it can build key beliefs and mindsets that students can, and all students deserve access to rigorous grade level content, and that by using the right high quality instruction materials effectively, educators can help to reach those achievement goals with their students. And then it also helps educators understand that what strong implementation of their product could look like, and connects to content specific vision so that there's excellent instruction. And so really seeing how the content develops through the use of high quality instructional materials. It equips educators. So going and learning these professional learnings help you to internalize and prepare to teach units and lessons, because in many ways they may be very different than the approach you took before. And that's why you're here. You wanted a new approach to better meet the needs of your students. And then lastly, they're going to equip educators to support the needs of diverse learners. And so high quality instructional materials and the associated professional learning teaches teachers, educators, and coaches how to use these tools in an effective way to reach the needs of our diverse student learners. In the award type, again, jumping into, if you are here, we're talking about the second award type, which is direct grants to LEAs to contract with a vendor. So TEA is going to award grants directly to LEAs, and you can use funds to purchase professional learning supports from vendors on the state approved list. You received baseline amount to support district implementation, coaching, and collective learning based on the size of your LEA, in which you input information about the number of students and teachers that were going to benefit from this. And that's how those awards were determined. LEAs receive a set amount per teacher and coach participating in this and receiving aligned professional learning support. So you're getting a baseline. So I just want to share that with you, that the grant, you are aware of that grant amount based on this component and how it was calculated. For 2A, this is the specific work that you're doing is aligned with use of these high quality core instructional materials, and either and or getting support around implementation in the professional learning and training to use the materials well. And so just as a quick reminder, there were several materials and you may have selected one, and at different content area, at different grade levels, or selected multiple products. And knowing that will help you identify the right vendor to work with, because they have been approved for specific products to support your work. As we jump into this, I really want to mention that there were some assurances that you were agreeing to and how these align with the vendor expectations to be on the state approved list and to remain on there. So I'll share a little bit about the why and the assurances and what you were asked to agree to. So the first one is about commitment. So having an appointed initiative lead is really important to help direct the work and streamline the communication, and that's why that's there. And then always, as you're rolling out a new initiative, I know you know this across your districts, but having a content-specific task force or some team that is really focused on the needs and the ability to roll out a strong plan and implementation so that teachers and coaches are prepared to better support their students. You committed to completing a set of planning tasks. This is really associated with having a strong strategic plan so that you're ready to go and roll out an effective way. You will need to identify school level leads to serve as primary contacts to ensure that they are able to deliver that message also to their campus as well. And of course, that people have agreed to participate, that buy-in is critically important for any kind of new initiative. Some key features of critical success factors. So when you're talking about the components that are important to know and use the products in the most effective way, there are three main things that we talk about. One is to follow the scope and sequence. And what I mean by that is that it is designed in a strategic way to develop students' content and skills, and may look different than a scope and sequence you've used in the past. And so I want to just stress again that that's why you're here. You wanted to do something new because you recognized a need. So recognizing that working with the scope and sequence for the specific products is really important to get the maximum benefits. The second is using the curriculum embedded assessments. They're truly been designed and to support and help you to progress monitor as students develop their content and skills over time in a different way. And so having those aligned assessments are going to be a strong measure to know where students are progressing as they go through the year. And then last, meeting the minimum number of instructional minutes is important for the different products, because the lessons are designed in a way to maximize that time, and having that full-time amount will ensure that you're able to use them well and effectively with your students. For the planning and implementation, the important things for planning is that we'll have some additional onboarding sessions to help you to launch your high quality instructional materials, and these sessions would support and prepare for successful implementation. Your initiative lead is going to attend ongoing check-ins, and this has to be with your vendor. So this isn't necessarily with TEA. This is like setting up that component with your vendor that you select to help ensure that you're ready, you're planning and you're rolling out the supports and trainings you need. and then attending an ongoing professional learning that you've established with your state-approved vendor that matches the needs of your school district. The next component is about data requirements. And so LEA's leadership commits to completing a set of planning tasks and deliverables at the minimum, which includes a few things. You would submit a strategic plan for your work. You do need to submit student level progress monitoring data. This is like your embedded unit assessments, periodic feedback surveys, and at the end of the year, you'll be doing an annual performance review of the vendor you selected, because they have to annually reapply to be state-approved vendors, and those ratings are going to be critical in that reapplication and who will be on that list. I do want to mention math zones. So a few of you on here probably also received 3A, which is about getting the math zones designation. So you were really interested in adding in a blended math product to support your K-8 students. And what this means is that you are going to commit to a few other assurances because they are required to be a math zones designee. And so there is some requirements with implementation support and making sure that you have a strong plan that you submit. You would be working with the approved blended learning supplements. The two approved vendors are ST Math and Zern. And then you are developing a strategic plan for evaluation in the spring. So you'd be submitting your plan, and everybody's going to be submitting a plan, but this one also includes a blended component. And then again, with some data collection, this is also about usage within those blended products. That's only for the math zone designees who received 3A. A quick overview, and then I'm going to take a pause in a minute and try to answer some questions. And so I wanted to give you a sample decision 2A timeline. Now you are setting up this work with the vendor that you select. So I'm just going to give you some overview of what this could look like. So we're going to have a vendor summit in October to let you know more about each of the vendors and help you to select who you would like to work with. And then by November at the latest, you'll be selecting your vendor and submitting that so we know who you've selected and you're working with. Really, you're focused on doing a few things. You might be doing some pilots in the spring and summer this year, but really you're focused on a lot of very strategic planning and trying those out through the pilot, and then thinking about what does that mean for future years. During this time, vendors are required to do some training to stay in alignment with our HQIM academies to remain on the state-approved vendor list. And then annually, we'll have an updated list that you could choose to work with another vendor throughout that time. Again, an important component of this is doing a vendor evaluation to make sure that we have the highest quality vendors approved in the state to work with you. I'm going to pause for just a moment and look at some of the questions if you want to add some there, and then I will jump into the coaching aspect. All of our webinars, one of the questions was, will the eGrants webinar be recorded? All webinars, the overview ones will be recorded and posted on that TCLAS website, a web page on the TA website. Probably not the office hours, but it will be for the overview, which is tomorrow morning. If you have specific questions about your district and like why you received an award or didn't receive an award, I'll give you some contact information at the end so you can email directly rather than me answering within the webinar for individual questions for your district. I'll get to the coaching piece and those questions in just a moment. So I see a few questions from there. Yeah, there's a question about vendor charges, and I'll just share with you that we did talk to them to get to that baseline price, but that is dependent on what you decide with your vendor. So you may ask for different types of kind of packages, if you will, in which you're asking for different supports. And so I can't give you what will the vendor charge. That's really going to be dependent on the conversation and why you're awarded grant funds to contract directly with them to find the right fit for your district. And I know some of you may have applied to CRIMSI. We did max out the number of people. Happy to talk directly with you if you now are working with a state approved vendor and what that means. And I'll share my contact information at the end. Yeah, do we turn in the data and the strategic plan to the vendor? And so we'll be sharing some additional information on that, but as recipient of the grants, TEA will look at the strategic plans so that we can help to support that. The vendors are doing due diligence to support you. So I'll share more information with that upcoming on what that looks like. There will be a template and we'll be providing that for the vendors to work directly with you and posting those shortly. Yeah. Sharon, you asked a question about how does this work for districts who did the pilot last year and are doing a full year implementation this year. I might need you to contact me directly if you're meaning you're working with CRIMSI this year, or you elected to just work on your own for the implementation, then we could talk a little bit more about what you've been doing. But I think the answer is that you could now work with a state approved vendor to better support your needs with your implementation. Yeah, the optional spring unit pilot will be running parallel to the chosen vendor. So some of you requested print materials for spring 2022, which is a unit pilot. And so that's indicating that you wanted to trial. So you would work with your vendor to help support you with that unit plan. And that's why it's working simultaneously. The unit pilot really is intended to inform you for what future implementation might want to look, what you might want that to look like. That's why we simultaneously say planning, because you're doing some trial probably with a smaller subset of people. If you were awarded for 2A, the products the decision here and the assurances is that you're using the 2A approved products, not products that are different than that. That's not what the grant funds were awarded for. So I just want to be clear that you're using the approved high quality instructional materials that are on the list from 2A and those print ones for 2B. I'll try to get to the part about the coaches in just a minute. Okay. What does it mean if all we were awarded was technical assistance similar to CRIMSI? if that's a different decision point, I'm not sure I can totally answer that. That might be working with RSSP, where they would support you. Could be similar to this, but they might be supporting you with other district needs. Sandra, if I'm not answering that correctly, if maybe I could talk to you separately if needed. Okay, I'm gonna pause from questions for a minute. I know that you all are asking a lot of questions, but okay, it is from 2A. So if you were awarded the technical assistance, that's the state approved vendor list that you would be able to select the vendor that you want to work with to support your needs and implementation. Okay, so I'm going to jump into the instructional coaches to make sure that I'm answering those questions. I'll come back in just a little bit. So some of you were also awarded Decision 2C, which is to help fund instructional coaches. And I'll spend some time jumping into this. So just as a recap, what that funding was for elementary coaches to support the use of materials on the state approved list. So those were those materials in 2A, and that's their primary responsibility. We'll go into there. The FTEs, the total amount was $125,000 per FTE per year, and the award was for 2.5 years, given the time that we're in right now, because September, and then really being able to effectively get a coach, and also when the federal funding is applied there. Coaches are required to complete trainings to support the tier 1 products on the approved list, so that they are receiving their supports and training to be able to effectively support the teachers that they're serving. There was a 1:30 coach to teacher ratio. However, there was some partial funding that was done, and you may have seen that in the awarded amount as you received those last week. With the assurances, there were two big assurances associated with the 2C award. One was that coaches are required to complete professional development requirements to receive continued funding. And then the second is that the coach's primary responsibility is to provide job-embedded coaching and feedback supports to teachers for implementing the approved core products. So those were the big assurances that are associated with the acceptance of this award. I want to dive in a little bit deeper here and what that means. And so LEAs will complete the following steps to help meet these assurances. One, you will either hire or identify a coach that will be supported with TCLAS funds. So you might already have somebody in your district or campus. You don't have to hire outside. You could identify somebody already who is an employee in the district, but that's who will be receiving the TCLAS fund awards. You must identify a total number of FTEs in alignment to the grant awarded. So if you were awarded 2 FTEs, you must meet requirements for the 2 FTEs. So that was in what you received last week. If awarded a part-time FTE, that FTE will still be required to complete the training requirements. So there was some like partial awarding to support or partial funding. You would provide TEA with a list of the coach participants in the T2C program. This enables us to be able to communicate with them and provide them the appropriate training. So approved coaches will be required to master high quality instructional materials academy courses. And I'll talk a little bit about the timeline and what that looks like. Just a quick note, coaches will have multiple opportunities to engage in this. And so you'll be able to, it's not just a one-time thing, just to be clear on there. So I wanted to give you a really quick overview of some training, high-level training timeline for instructional coaches, and then we'll follow up with some additional information later. So we're here right now we are going to have a coach summit. I'll just share with you, this will be a virtual opportunity, probably more than one option, and be able to support your coaches. And I'll be sending out some additional information soon, but so that they can learn more about the coaching responsibilities and opportunities there. And then for this initial training in this year, you're going to have your coaches attend as observers in the spring CRIMSI pilot. And so we have coaches in the CRIMSI pilot. And so your coaches would have the opportunity to be observers. However, if you've already had coaches go through CRIMSI, there'll be a way to indicate that. So we wouldn't ask them to do that again. And then for the next year, starting in the summer, we will be rolling out the high quality instructional materials academies, in which coaches will go through a training. It's not for the whole year, but it will take place over the year. So there'll be more than one opportunity, with coaches being able to obtain a certification. During this time, they are, of course, still supporting teachers through job embedded coaching and simultaneously going through the training. We know that's challenging, but this way we can add some additional support as well. And then moving forward, those certified coaches will then be able to facilitate the academies locally and continue to provide job embedded supports throughout that process. And so that's the focus of like a high level view of the training. I'm going to pause again and take a look at the questions. So bear with me as I look over some of the things you're asking. You're welcome to stay. I'm going to go over some next steps for TCLAS in general, but if you did not receive 2C funds, you do not need to, especially if you've attended other webinars. The things I'll mention are the same at the end. You might have already heard. So just letting people know. For how can we find out more about the CRIMSI coaching training? And so over the course of the next month or so, I'll be sending out some additional information and then host another opportunity for you to learn about the spring coaching training so that you have greater details. So bear with me as I send out some additional information to help you with what are the next steps. Yeah, if you have coaches that went through and are going through CRIMSI coaching right now, there may be some opportunities for them to not have to go through coaching again, but we'll look at there will be like some requirement to move out of that if they've already attended the training. I will share greater details as a follow-up. The question, I did get a question about why were they identified for elementary. That was part of the TCLAS award. In the initial release, we prioritized K-5 along with the strong foundations. The decision to see when it went out was only for K-5. There was not one for secondary. I realize you probably have those needs as well, but hopefully if you were awarded for elementary, it might help offset costs at the local level. Let's see. Trying to answer questions. Hold on one second. Your timeline, the timeline that I shared with you initially is like just a view of that. If you have not hired your coaches yet and you're planning to do that in the spring, we'll have multiple opportunities for training. So we understand that you might be taking a moment to figure out who those are. We could also, if I find some interest, might even have like an opportunity to share like hiring components as well. I have a question if this is tied to the Texas Literacy Initiative grant. This is not, we did not review those grants as a component of this to make any decisions. So it was not specifically tied to that initiative grant, if you've asked that. The coaches, I have a question about how long will this fund, the funds were designated for 2.5 years. For the FTEs, so 2.5 years. Yeah, 2 FTEs means coaches, sorry, you know, education, we love acronyms. Can coaches be classroom teachers as well? We are a very small district. So it is up to you to decide, but I think there are 2 big decisions that you need to make about the coaching. They have to commit and do the training, and then they also have to have their primary responsibility being to support the teachers that they were assigned. Happy, Kimberly, to follow up with you individually if it's helpful. How many hours is the training? So we'll have a couple webinars in the fall, and then we haven't rolled out the Academy's training. It does consist of some components that are done on their own. I'll have to share out some additional time on that. The one for the spring pilot is not a huge amount of time. You could think of about a day and a half of training total over a period of time. Okay, give me a second. I have a lot of questions in here. Okay, I have a question about that. I have a coach that is already working with Eureka Math. If you were awarded funds for 2C, I think I already answered this, but you're allowed, you do not have to hire new people. You can use it to support coaches that you've identified already within your district, as long as you're meeting the assurances with the training and their primary responsibility. I'll share in a minute if you have specific questions for your district about what you were awarded and specifics of how to get contact. Do all of our funds go to the vendor, or can we use to pay teacher stipends? So the intention here is that the grant funds go toward the professional learning. Happy to talk more about some thoughts around there, but the grant funds are intended to go towards the use of a vendor to support your work. So I have some questions about, could we change what pilot we're doing and to coincide with the coaching? So I think the big component there to just share with you with a spring versus a summer may have to do with the printed materials, and we might need to just chat separately about that because the spring pilot would likely have a different unit than the summer, because the summer pilot is intended to support summer learning. That's my big concern with you. When you do the pilot with your state approved vendor is up to you. I would just be cautious of the print materials. Okay. Can the funds for coaches be spent on paying vendor coaches? So being able to pay somebody outside your district? No, the funding for T2C needs to go to somebody you're hiring within your district. And so you need to use those funds specifically or for hiring someone new or identifying a coach within your district, not an external coach, like a contract service. The coaching, so question here, does the training for coaches come from TEA or will ESCs be able to get the training? So Christy, we definitely can talk about that, but the coaching comes for the high quality instructional materials academies. ESCs are going to be able to deliver those academies next fall. So ESCs could do that. Happy to talk specifically about that tomorrow morning, if helpful. Do I expect the coaches to be mostly dedicated positions or districts within current roles? So the answer is it's up to you. So you, I think I already talked about this. The big thing for your coaches to make sure is that they are meeting those assurances. One, they're able to be trained. And then two, you are ensuring that their primary responsibility is to coach teachers in effective use with their students of the approved high quality Core 1 instructional materials. Who you designated for that is really up to you. Can the coach serve other campuses? So as part of the requirement of that, the big thing that again, it has to go back to those assurances about the training and their primary responsibility. You receive the funds according to the number of elementary teachers that coach was supporting. So that needs to be their primary responsibility. However, you may have received some partial funding and happy to talk individually about that. Yeah, I think I answered this. Like their primary responsibility. I know some of you are smaller and you probably have a coach at the district level who does elementary and secondary. That's fine, but they do need to support and be able to attend those trainings to support with the use of the approved products. I'm unsure the question about how many coaches you in your 2C award would have designated how many coaches you were awarded. And I'll give you contact information in a second. Okay, I'm going to pause for a minute and put up some next steps, and then I'll get back to a few more questions here as we get closer to 5 o'clock. So just some next steps for you, and then I'll come back to a few of the questions, but want to give you some contact information. So first, I want to acknowledge that this support is a heavy lift, but it is intended to have a large impact. With that said, this is intended to have a lasting and significant impact on learning acceleration. And that's the intention, is to help to support that you have training and guidance to effectively use. If you're taking the initiative to move to using another instructional material and making big changes, that takes time and energy, and we acknowledge that, but the impact can be significant. With all of that said, you may decide after today's webinar that you're not able to fully commit to the requirements of this decision, or decision A or decision 2C. And if that is true, you can still let us know and say that this is not the right choice right now for you. So I would just want to share that with you. If after this webinar, you're realizing that maybe those assurances are not what you were thinking, it's okay to come back and say that this award is not what you're wanting to do right now. You can go ahead and send a request to tclass@tea.texas.gov to let us know. But just want to make that apparent. We understand that this was a very quick process and you might have gotten excited about some of the decisions, but now understanding a little bit deeper have maybe needed to shift what you're thinking. Just please let us know. The next thing I just want to share with you is there'll be some follow-ups. So like I said, I'll be putting more information out there, and we as the agency will, to help support you with next steps. We'll offer some optional and some additional information, especially with the training components. We'll have our vendor selection time and help to support you with finding the right match. Those are coming and we'll send those. We do have another webinar tomorrow for eGrants overview that's happening in the morning at 9 o'clock. And then there are a few more decision points that have Kickoff webinars on Monday and Tuesday next week. And then just a reminder about you'll need to complete your eGrant application by the end of October. But there'll be office hours and opportunities to support you. Really quickly before I jump back into the questions, if you do have questions about TCLAS, please go ahead and email. And I know many of you have been using this. You can also email me decision point specific questions, and I'll be able to help you. If you're needing an answer to questions about, I'm not sure which a pilot I asked for or things like that, if you'll email TCLAS, they can let you know, or it'll get sent to me too. But that's the information. I'm going to go ahead and jump back into these questions. If you don't have any questions, please feel free to leave. We have about 8 minutes left. I'll try to answer as many as I can. Again, we'll post this. Thank you all for attending and listening so intently. Please continue to ask questions and send us any emails if something else comes up. Thank you all for your time. I'll continue to answer some of the questions here. Yeah, when is it recommended that districts post the literacy coach position? So now that you know you've been awarded, you can start to begin to post that if you would like to. We're going to set up some other components about like supporting you with if you've not had a coach before, and maybe some hiring recommendations. And so I'll be setting up some additional webinars to support that work in the next steps in training for your coaches. Okay, back into many questions. Yeah, so I know some of you asked, don't have the specifics to the decision. You can email TCLAS or try to get that survey that was sent to you last week. I won't be able to answer that specifically for districts. Monica, I'm sorry if I'm saying some things on the slides differently than what you've heard. Please let me know. I want to be specific to your question. This is a different webinar than the other ones, so that might be, we've been having a lot of webinars. Probably some of you have been seeing me on a few. Will coaches be similar to the CRIMSI coaches as currently implemented? It really depends on what your coach is doing. And so if you're talking about the awarded 2C, I don't know what your CRIMSI coach, so we could talk about that a little bit more if needed. And I'll be setting up that time so you can learn more about the training, so you can find out, will it be similar, to better understand who your coaches should be. Yeah, so if we have teachers that have had results coaching levels 1 and 2, do they have to go through the CRIMSI training? So this is coaching specifically around the high quality instructional materials or the products that you selected. So they do need to attend the training because they need to learn about that. It's not just a coaching course. It is rooted in the specific materials. And so they would need to attend those trainings. Yeah, we want to begin implementing in 22-23. When will we be optimal to coach? That's a good question. So I think I would start looking for a coach now, and then they have the opportunity to training and really get to know and prepare. So you could, begin to hire your coach in early next year. So they have a strong opportunity, but that really is a decision on your end. When will, the TCLAS recordings, when will they be posted? I think they're trying to process those as quickly as possible and put up those recordings. I don't have an exact time. Hopefully some will be done by the end of the week. We'll try to get those posted to the website as quickly as possible. Monica, I don't know what your question is, so I'll have to go back to it. Who can attend the Coach Summit this fall? Yeah, could those involved in the district personnel with the grant and hiring coaches attend? Absolutely. So I'll be able to provide some additional information. I'll follow it up so you can see who's the best people to attend and what will be the focus of any additional trainings that we provide for people to attend. Happy to help train as many people as is useful to you. I'll go back to your question. Monica, you asked a question about you printed the slides twice and they don't match the exact presentation. Is there an alternate one? I'm unsure what slides you're talking about. If you're talking about the slides from the prior webinars, that was an entry that was for the initial TCLAS. So there was on the web page, there's old recordings and slides that were associated with the application for TCLAS, so initial information. So this is going a little bit deeper, and the slides wouldn't match. So I'm sorry if that's what you meant. If it's not, please let me know and I'll try to answer the question differently. Yeah, I have a couple ESC specific questions. I'm probably going to answer those tomorrow during our weekly call about the different, specifically to ESC. So if you'll hold and ask me tomorrow, I'll try to make sure I address those. I see lots of people dropping off. We have about 2 minutes left, but if you do have any additional questions, please add them to the Q&A. And I'll try to answer those. If not, I hope you have a good rest of your day. Can the coach be used to help with English learning students? I don't know the specifics of this question, but again, these coaches are intended to support with the use of these core high quality instructional materials. And so that was what the application was about. So you need to make sure you're meeting the assurances with the training and that their primary responsibility is to support. And I can go back to that slide for reference. So these are the two big assurances, and this is what you'll be holding true to when you accept the award and use that towards the funding of salaries. Okay. Well, I have that it is 5 o'clock. I hopefully have answered your questions. If I didn't, please feel free to contact us at tclass@tea.texas.gov, or if there are specific decision point ones, you can contact me directly, Melissa Lautenschlager. Thank you for your time. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and thank you for all you do.